Hello everyone, I'm a Broken Robot. When it comes to the numerous characters from the Star Wars franchise that have had their legacy tarnished, no character has fallen from grace harder than that of General Grievous. This fan-favorite character went from being an unstoppable Jedi-killing machine in the 2003 Clone Wars series to being a bumbling Saturday morning cartoon villain that exists to be made a fool of, as shown in the 2008 Clone Wars series. What many Star Wars fans, myself included, get wrong though, is that while characters like Boba Fett, Luke Skywalker, and Darth Vader have had their legacy tarnished by a mix of Disney mismanaging the franchise and poor plot choices by writing teams, General Grievous was purposely taken off his pedestal by George Lucas himself, for reasons we'll discuss in today's video. In 2003, in order to build up hype for the third and final installment in the Star Wars prequel trilogy, George Lucas wished to expand the Star Wars universe by funding a TV show that would take place in between episode 2 and 3 during the events of the Clone Wars to help flesh out the wider Star Wars universe. While many online sources state that George originally wanted a gritty live-action TV show that appealed to adults, a combination of budget constraints and licensing agreements not only would force George to give up on hopes for his live-action show, but the show would have to be entirely animated, as a licensing agreement between LucasArts and Cartoon Network meant that the show was greenlit entirely for a channel that showed solely animated content. While at first, from George Lucas's perspective, his passion project was going off the rails fast, his list of episode ideas made its way to the desk of Genndy Tartakovsky, the legendary animator and creator of Samurai Jack, who was able to use the framework script from the live-action show that never got off the ground and was able to produce 25 animated episodes over a span of 2 years. In fact, many fans of Tartakovsky can tell that the 2003 Clone Wars art style was directly inspired by Samurai Jack and the Powerpuff Girls. Instead of a traditional TV show, a series of 25 episodes were created and then divided into 3 segments of 3 to 5 minutes that all connected to form one story. These segments would play in between time slots, and while some sections of the animation haven't aged well, they were popular among longtime fans for fleshing out the Star Wars universe and giving screen time to characters who were normally relegated to the background. The shorts also garnered their own fanbase, with an entire generation of children growing up buying action figures of Captain Frodo and Dirge, but out of all of the characters introduced in the 2003 Clone Wars series, one stuck out among the crowd. When the animators and writers for the show were given George Lucas's notes for what the series would be, they were given a description for General Grievous as an evil Jedi-hunting cyborg, and while George Lucas probably assumed that the animators and writers would make a character like Boba Fett that existed to look cool and sell action figures, Genndy Tartakovsky not only made a cool-looking character that sold action figures, but a character so badass that George Lucas would have to spend the next decade rewriting the Star Wars universe and eventually retconning General Grievous from the 2003 series for the updated Disney Clone Wars series in 2008. In the 2003 version of the Clone Wars, General Grievous is a lot of things. He's a cyborg, he has a tragic but untold backstory, he's feared by Jedi despite having no Force abilities, he's a pupil of Count Dooku, and he's a feared general and special operative in the Confederacy of Independent Systems, and most importantly, he's a fan of trinkets. When we as the audience are first introduced to General Grievous, it's through the final dying breaths of a now uncanon Jedi general begging Master Obi-Wan Kenobi for help as his army had been completely wiped out by the CIS's new droid general. We then see him kill Shaggy from Scooby-Doo and single-handedly take on 5 Jedi Masters at once, killing most of them in the process. This is a far cry from the coughing coward we see in Revenge of the Sith. In fact, Star Wars insiders reported in 2004 that George Lucas was unhappy with the depiction of General Grievous in the animated shorts since it didn't line up well with the version of Grievous that had been depicted in live action. A little bit of trivia many fans often forget is how the live-action Revenge of the Sith film was in production at the same time as LucasArts was animating the 2003 Clone Wars series. So at times certain plot points didn't properly sync up with the live-action film that would release in 2005. In order to rectify the macho Ronin character traits given to General Grievous, Lucas and other writers for Revenge of the Sith personally requested a scene to be included in the animated shorts of General Grievous fighting Mace Windu and having his chest damaged. While LucasArts animators assumed that this was to justify why General Grievous coughed so much in the live-action movie but not in the show, instead it was actually a last-minute patch for the lore to appease George Lucas's ego. George Lucas needed a way to explain to fans how General Grievous went from being able to take on 5 Jedi Masters at once to being overpowered by one General Kenobi wearing plot armor. While the live-action General Grievous still looks fantastic almost 2 decades later, the fight scene between him and Kenobi doesn't exactly do Grievous justice, seeing how the animated show depicted him as a fast-moving and capable fighter. Despite George disliking the patchwork character arc that he had created, fans old and young thought General Grievous was a total badass despite his frail and cowardly nature in the live action, and the merchandise sales proved it, with General Grievous being on posters, selling multiple versions of action figures, and even getting his own Lego set in 2005. At the time, the idea was that General Grievous was so weak and cowardly in live action because he was weakened by a short duel with Mace Windu that saw his lungs getting crushed. It would also account for Grievous's arrogant nature and massive ego, despite being a coward and pushover in combat demonstrations. When the 2008 Clone Wars animated series was released, George made it abundantly clear that this series would be the official canon events that took place in between Episode 2 and 3, retconning the 2003 animated series. While in many ways the updated Clone Wars cartoon got a lot of things right, such as making Ventress canon, fleshing out characters previously relegated to the background, and expanding the Star Wars universe as a whole, unfortunately though, these rewrites of previously established characters gave us a much different General Grievous than the one that we met back in 2003. Throughout the 2008 Clone Wars cartoon, we see General Grievous not as a skilled warrior and master tactician, but as a bumbling brute that destroys his own men for comic relief and shakes his fist at the heroes as he runs away, much like Dr. Claw and Inspector Gadget. We also infamously saw Grievous act as a coward in almost every episode he's involved in, and his relationship with Count Dooku went from that of the master and his student to a master and his leash dog that he just uses at his own advance. For a while there was protest from the General Grievous fanbase. How could George allow one of the main villains to be depicted as an idiot who's outclassed by Gungans, when less than a decade earlier he was storming the Chancellor's palace and fighting multiple Jedi at once like it was nothing? This brings me to my main point of this video. Look, I get it, really. General Grievous is a total badass in the 2003 Clone Wars, but the unfortunate truth is that he was never meant to be cool. George Lucas was heavily influenced by classical storytelling when he wrote characters, and when he originally depicted General Grievous, in his mind, he wanted an overconfident Saturday morning cartoon villain that you would find in shows like G.I. Joe or He-Man. George had to alter the character entirely due to the cartoon, depicting him in the live-action movie as a coward but still a capable general. Then, when the 2008 Clone Wars was released, George Lucas and the writers would follow up and make sure to rectify the mistakes present in the 2003 show and fully depict Grievous as a foolish, overconfident villain that rarely comes out on top and is usually used as the butt of a joke. It might not be the depiction that sits well with the headcanon of people who grew up with the 2003 Clone Wars, but it's the true depiction that George Lucas was going for originally. In 2023, General Grievous as a character has been warped from an unstoppable killing machine in the 2003 Clone Wars to an intimidating but cowardly villain in the live-action Revenge of the Sith movie, to a foolish joke that only exists as an obstacle for the heroes to get over before the episode is wrapped up in the 2008 Clone Wars series. Even through things like video games and the expanded universe materials, General Grievous has been further kicked from the pedestal that the 2003 Clone Wars placed him on. While the current canon General Grievous might not be the Jedi-hunting cyborg we met back in 2003, he's still a well-designed character and is beloved by fans of all ages to this day, even if he's no longer as cool as many like myself once thought he was. But what do you guys think? Do you think if George Lucas had more of a hands-on approach with the 2003 animated series, the fanbase's feelings towards General Grievous would be much different? Or do you prefer the way that General Grievous was depicted in the 2003 Clone Wars cartoon, and dislike how Grievous has been turned from a serious threat into basically no threat at all? Leave a comment down below. I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan, so I'd be more than happy to hear your guys' opinion on the topic. And with that being said, if you've stuck around this long, why not take a moment to like and subscribe? If you like this video, it helps me out personally in the YouTube algorithm, and it lets me know that you guys want more content. Also, feel free to subscribe so that you guys don't miss my future video essays, reviews, and commentary on whatever topic of the week has piqued my interest. I hope you all have a great day, add some lightsabers to your collection, and stay cool.